I was recently talking with someone about the V, or the line in your reed, which really designates where your tip is going to be. So I call it the tip line. And I'll draw on some of these reeds just so you can see it a little bit better. So there's this one, and then, whoops, I did not do a good job. Let's see. Good thing it's pencil. All right. So these are my tip lines. And what we were talking about earlier this week was, so what does it really do? Like, what's the difference if your tip line, this V, is steeper or if it's more flat? And I think it's a fabulous question. And you'll notice, like, between different reed makers as well, you might not have a line at all. You might just have a more blended approach here and not a definitive line. Now, I will say the reason I put a line in my reeds is because I find it really helps the reeds to stay balanced, and it really helps me actually to balance them easier because everything is way more symmetrical when it's a straight line than if it's just blended. Now, I have made reeds before that were great, that I did experiment with a blended tip line, but my conclusion is, for me, it's easier and I get better results when I have a tip line. And I do leave this cane in the center. I make sure I leave cane there so I don't remove too much, because removing that will really make your reed bright and difficult to work with, and you won't really like the outcome. And you can kind of see here how I demonstrate that with my hash marks. The more hash marks, the thicker the part of the tip, and then the fewer as it goes out to the side and out at the top. Okay, but let's talk about the line. So the tip line. I like to start mine anywhere between 65 and 66, or finish up there rather. I actually start it closer to 66 because you can always move the line back if you need more vibrations, but you can't really move the line back up because you can't add more cane, but you can always take some away. So it's easier to start higher up and then move it back if you need to. But let's go ahead and measure. I think when people see this, sometimes it looks like it's a very steep V, like maybe from here on the side to the point, it looks like several millimeters, but it's actually not. My tip lines are actually from this point, from the side to the center, the point of the V, is usually about 1 millimeter. So let's measure that. Now I drew on it so it's harder to tell on this side. So let's look at this other side. Yeah, let's see if you can see that. Exactly 1 millimeter. So it's really not super steep. It's also not flat. Let's check this one. Yeah, same thing. Okay, so what would it do if you had a steeper angle? Maybe if you had 2 millimeters. So if your reed, let's kind of erase what I did here. Maybe your reed does start a little lower and you have a steeper V. I'm gonna make it a little dramatic to make my point clear, like this. So what is that really doing? Well, if you compare the two V's, the one on the right is what I usually do, and the one on the left is probably about 2 millimeters. It might be slightly more than that if I were to actually measure it, but let's pretend that just for demonstration purposes, let's say 2.5 millimeters. Okay, now what I notice is if the reed is the same length for both, then you're going to have more area on the side of the reed for vibrations to come in. So this side right here will be further back. So if this reed is at 70, then maybe your line is at 65 and it goes up higher. So really what that's doing is more vibrations are coming in through the side, which is great. but it's a little thicker probably up here, which means the balancing of it is going to be a little bit different. So I would imagine this would help to hold the reed more round, like more open in the tip if you look at it this way, if it were that angled of a V, because the sides coming down thinner right here will hold everything together, yes, but I think it's going to make it a little more open at the top. Not in like a loose sides kind of open, but like a profile view, like it'll just be a bigger opening to work with. And maybe that's what you're going for, depending on where you live and the climate and such things as that. Now this one, you have more room here in the tip to do more blending because you just have more in the middle to work with. And I already said I like the middle to be, thicker here in front of the peak, and then it gets thinner as it goes out. But this is really where you get your beautiful sound in both versions. That's where you get your beautiful sound, especially on a C. If you remove too much cane right here, middle C will definitely be brighter. So that's a very important adjustment to note. One other thing, I think having a very steep V like this, you're probably going to have a shorter tip, I would imagine, because you're going to get way more vibrations in on the side, and you're going to have to balance that somewhere. And maybe that's what you're looking for. And so in that case, maybe experiment with a slightly steeper V. Now with this 1 millimeter difference here, it's not as drastic, so it can be more blended. Yeah. So all in all, I'm all about experimenting. So if if you're not drawing a line, maybe experiment drawing a line. Do 1 millimeter from side to the middle and then do 2 and see what happens. But if you're having issues with your reeds being too large and too difficult to work with, I feel like the steeper V might not be the best one to do because your reed will be more open. On the contrary, if you did not really do a tip at all, like a V, and you just went straight across like this, that I really think would propose a challenge, because you'd still have to leave that cane in front of that line that you're drawing across. And I think it'd be very easy to remove too much and make the reed too pancakey or too flat. So I would, if you are not really making any sort of V shape, whether that's a definitive line or it's just a blended line, then I would definitely do that, because I feel like it's going to give you more core and more meat, so to say, in your sound, because you have more cane right there. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on different measurements and the different steepness of the V. So if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, leave it down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.